Hey there, last week I told you about my New Year's resolution. I'm going to be focusing on focusing, but this week I thought I'd run through the top 5 resolutions that you can make that'll make the most difference to your progress in the coming year. And the great thing about resolutions is that it doesn't have to be the 1st of January for you to make one. So if you're watching this in March, now's as good a time as any to make any or all of these changes to the way that you approach learning the piano. I think I'll go in reverse order with this list, so let's jump straight in with resolution number 5. Fix one bad habit. You probably know that there's something about the way that you approach your playing that isn't optimal. Maybe your teacher has told you that you tend to sit too close to the piano, or that you need to round your fingers a little more, or maybe you find it really hard to stick to the same fingering each time you play through a piece, or you know that you've been avoiding scales or sight reading. It doesn't need to be anything huge, but just pick one thing that you know that you could do better and just work on that. Later on in the year, when you're confident that you fixed that one little problem, then you could move on to fixing something else, and these little changes add up to big improvements over time. Resolution number 4, practice more consistently. This can be a really hard one because it's so easy for the week to go by and to find that you haven't managed to get any practice in. And then we try to make up for that by doing 2 hours in one sitting the night before our next lesson. Unfortunately, a lot of that marathon session will be time wasted because in order for new skills to stick, we need a cycle of practice and sleep, so that our brains can process the new information that we're giving it. And I think what often happens is that we say to ourselves, well, I've only got 10 minutes, so that's not worth doing anything with. I'll wait till I have half an hour to do it properly. But then that half an hour doesn't materialize, so we end up panic practicing at the end of the week. So I think, let's rethink that this year, because even if you only have 10 minutes, that 10 minutes can be really valuable if you know how to apply it. And in fact, 10 minutes is the perfect amount of time to work on a really small section of music. And you probably already know which part of a piece is giving you the most trouble. So if you were to set a timer for 10 minutes and turn on the metronome and work through, really slowly through those tricky 2 bars or 4 bars or whatever, you'll have done some really valuable work. So your resolution here is to find a way to do something every day, even if it is for only 5 or 10 minutes. And if you just commit to 5 minutes, you'll find that many times that 5 minutes will turn into half an hour once you actually get into practicing. Because sometimes the problem isn't that we don't have time, but we just don't feel the motivation to start. But once we actually get to the piano, we find that we do enjoy the work. If that sounds like you, then maybe practicing consistently really is just finding a way to get your bum onto the piano stool. And that might mean breaking it down into that one first step. I'm just going to sit at the piano for 1 minute. And if you can do that, a lot of the time you'll find that the rest is easy because you've gotten over that first hurdle of just getting yourself to the piano. My third resolution is to start including some easy music into your practice on a regular basis. And by easy, I mean pieces that you can figure out in one sitting. If you're working on a particular exam level, or on the pieces that you've always wanted to play, or on pieces that are, at a difficulty that you think you should be working on, then what you're doing is the equivalent of overtraining for an athlete. Now, I'm definitely not an athlete, but I know that when a runner is training for, say, a marathon, they don't try and do a 20-mile run every day. They do a lot of shorter runs and occasionally longer runs. So they have days where they push themselves a bit harder and days where they take it easy. And both of those strategies contribute to their overall fitness. So we can take the same approach to learning piano. Yes, we want to be pushing ourselves and pushing our limits and making sure we're learning new skills, new techniques, and we're developing our abilities. But if you're not also including repertoire that's well within your ability, then you're probably not developing that fluency that makes music sound good. And you're depriving yourself of a lot of pleasure and enjoyment in playing music that's easy for you to play but sounds great. So maybe this year you could invest in some collections of music that are a few grades below your current level, and you could treat it as your sight reading practice. There are loads of great books out there catering for all kinds of musical tastes and different styles of music. And actually I'm planning to do a video soon to review some of my favourites to give you some ideas of different books that you could invest in. So watch out for that. I guarantee if you make this your resolution this year and start to regularly play easy music, you'll very quickly start to see a difference in your sight reading ability and also in your confidence, because you'll find that this is music that you can play without too much difficulty and possibly even perform for others. And particularly in those moments when you start to doubt your abilities because you're working on music that's at the edge of your abilities all the time, it's important to have music that you can play just for your own pleasure that isn't hard. Resolution number 2 is to start practicing smart. We already touched on this when we talked about consistent practice and putting small chunks of time to good use. So taking small pieces of music to work on at one time is an example of smart practice. But there are other things we can do to get the most out of our practice time, like using effective practice techniques. In the description below this video, you'll find a link to my free practice workbook. If you haven't already downloaded it, it's got a few of my favourite and the most effective practice techniques I know to really help to make your playing as secure as possible in the least amount of time. And I also made a video a while back demonstrating a few techniques, so you could check that out too if you need some ideas. Other ways to practice smart could be taking the time to analyse your music before you start playing, and that could be as simple as making sure you understand the rhythm, making sure you understand the key signature, and making note of any chord progressions or repeated sections or obvious patterns. By way of contrast, an example of not practicing smart is the very common habit of playing the music through from start to finish and then just going back to the start to do it again and ignoring any mistakes or hesitations or sections that you know just don't sound quite right and just hoping that somehow the problem will magically resolve itself the next time you play through. If you're practicing smart, you can certainly play through, but you're keeping your ears open for those problems and immediately zoning in on them to fix them before you continue. The bottom line is, don't waste your time when you're practicing. If your approach is haphazard and aimless, it'll take you twice as long to learn any piece of music and you run the risk of abandoning it. So find a couple of practice techniques that work for you, that you enjoy using, and apply them systematically to everything that you work on. Before I come to my number one resolution, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's already signed up for channel membership. I really appreciate it, and I know it's early days yet and my tutorial library is only getting started, so I really do appreciate the leap of faith, and I'll be working hard to make sure that it's a really great resource. If you're thinking about joining, I invite you to let me know in the comments if there's something in particular that you'd like me to do in a tutorial that would help you to make that decision, and I'm open to all suggestions. And if you'd like to join but you can't see the join button, it could be that you're watching this on an iPhone or a tablet and the button isn't visible, so I've also put a link in the description that will take you straight to the membership sign up page. So my top suggested resolution for you in 2022 is to practice at the speed of no mistakes. When you're having difficulty with a piece of music that you're trying to play or a section of it and you've worked out any note reading issues or what fingers to use and you understand the rhythm, there's usually only one other reason why it's not working. You're playing it too fast. That's why you keep hitting the wrong note, that's why you keep fluffing the rhythm, that's why you have to stop dead in the middle of the bar. Even if you think you're playing slowly, if you're still making mistakes, then it's too fast and no amount of repeating it at that speed is going to fix the problem. Because the problem is you're playing too fast for your brain to be able to understand what you want to do and to coordinate the necessary movements. The only way to allow your brain to lay down the correct circuitry is slow, careful repetition. That's why the more often you play something incorrectly, the harder it becomes to ever get it right. You've repeated the wrong thing so often that you've laid down a little circuit in your brain for it that can only be overwritten with the correct pattern with the many more repetitions than it would have taken just to learn it right in the first place. So don't do that to yourself. The composer Stephen Heller famously said, if you want to progress quickly, practice slowly. If you want to progress slowly, practice quickly. And I know it can be hard to make that shift in thinking. For many of us, playing very slowly feels like a waste of time because we want to hear the music as we ultimately intend it, and partly because we feel we should be able to play at a faster speed if we're any good. Really though, one of the things that frequently marks a professional note from an amateur is their willingness to practice incredibly slowly during the learning phase in order to learn it correctly first time round. So print it out, turn it into a cross stitch, paint it across your practice room wall, or maybe just stick a note in your piano, but practice at the speed of no mistakes. I promise you, if you allow yourself to play incredibly slowly at the beginning, you'll get your music up to full speed in half the time, and you won't know how to play it wrong. So now over to you. I want to know which one of these resolutions appeals to you, which ones you see yourself applying, or maybe you've got some completely different ideas, and I'd love to hear about those too. Finally, let me take this opportunity to wish you the very best in 2022. It may be a return to some kind of normality for all of us. Thank you so much for your support in the past year, and I'm looking forward to making lots more videos in the year to come. So I'll see you very soon, and happy practicing.